Lavi and Ritika were standing at the bus stop, having just left the college premises. They were best friends and shared their deepest secrets with each other. Ritika kept talking about Vinay, who had been courting her for several months. He was from a nearby boys' college and had his eye on Ritika as she was quite pretty. She was of average height, about 165 centimeters, with a good figure. She was neither overweight nor too thin. She had straight hair with a neat parting. Her breasts were average, but for Vinay, they were a fantasy come true for nighttime fun. At least until he saw Lavi. After meeting Lavi, his nightly fantasies changed. And this was understandable because Lavi was an exceptional girl. Lavi was known among the students of 20 nearby colleges for her beauty. Although she didn't realize it herself, her friends did. She often encountered female envy from her college acquaintances. The guys invariably tried to win Lavi, but to no avail, since she was absolutely indifferent to them. She didn't do it on purpose to offend anyone, she just didn't realize how attractive she was. Lavi was tall and slender, with a delightfully curved figure. Her breasts were seductively round and measured 32 cm. Under the veil, her figure caused delight. Her buttocks were such a delicate part of her anatomy that they deprived many students of sleep. Her hips were the epitome of feminine sensuality. Her neck was graceful, and her face was the most innocent, with large brown eyes and alluring lips. Many tried to win her over, but Ravi was the closest to her. He was a technology student while Lavi was still in the 12th grade. He first saw her at a bus stop near her house when she was in 11th grade. Ravi was a decent young man from a moderately wealthy background. His father owned a retail store, and his mother was a school teacher. Lavi's father ran a small grocery store, and her mother worked as an accountant at a hospital. Lavi inherited her beauty from her mother, which was obvious to the casual observer. Ravi was literally captivated by her beauty. Although he was shy and timid, in a rare moment of courage, he approached her at the bus stop and introduced himself. The two quickly struck up a friendship, as Lavi liked him as well. Ravi was a tall and handsome young man with good manners. Over time, their friendship grew into a romance, and we can safely say that these two were at the peak of happiness. In the age of smartphones, their courtship was modern and not boring. However, Ravi wanted more than that, the physical manifestations of their relationship. With Lavi, it promised to be a heavenly delight. At this point in the story, Lavi was very happy for her friend. She realized that Vinay was not such a bad guy. He dropped out of college and worked at an auto shop owned by his father. Although he was far from the main one in this business, his appearance gave the impression of a rich young man. He rode a big motorcycle, and it was not difficult for him to attract Ritika's attention. Sometimes he regretted not choosing Lavi, but he knew that she was too tough for him. Lavi was a big fish. Ritika interrupted her monologue about her personal life and asked her friend, "Where is your boyfriend, Lavi? Has he not appeared in recent days?" Ravi said that he would come to meet me. I don't know what's holding him back. At that moment, Vinay arrived and Ritika said goodbye to her friend. She didn't notice the lustful looks her boyfriend was throwing at Lavi. Although Lavi was a little embarrassed, she tried not to pay attention to it. After they left, Lavi waited for a few minutes, looking down the street in front of the bus stop. That's where she usually met Ravi. At the end of the street, he usually appeared on his motorcycle. Lavi tried to keep their relationship a secret, as is customary in the middle class. Her father cared more about the family's reputation than his own life or well-being, and she didn't want to jeopardize his aspirations. Soon Ravi arrived on his motorcycle and Lavi, happy to the core, headed towards her boyfriend. As she got on his motorcycle and drove out onto the main road, she remembered what happened a few days ago. Ravi began to demand more physical intimacy from her. After declaring his love a few months ago, she happily accepted his feelings. But she did not expect that he would fall so deeply under her spell and would not be able to resist touching her. At first it was light kisses on the cheek, the light touches of arms, hips, legs. In the corner of the mall, he even tried to touch her breasts. Lavi politely refused him. She said it was too early for that. Ravi was silent for several weeks, but soon his hormones made themselves known again. After a few days, he returned to his attempts at touching at every opportunity. It wasn't that he didn't love her. Ravi loved Lavi more than his own life. He was practically lost in her beauty and charm. He idolized her every step, but having such a seductive image of female beauty in front of him, it was incredibly difficult for him to restrain his desires. A week ago, he allowed himself to tightly squeeze her elastic buttock, for which he received a stern look and reproach. Lavi was a little upset by his behavior. She reproached him for such behavior, saying that their relationship should be more mature. However, after a couple of days, she felt the consequences of her reproach. Ravi became cold towards her. He stopped calling her, avoided communication, and this began to worry Lavi. She began to apologize to him for her harshness. Ravi took advantage of the situation and continued to remain distant, leading Lavi to the point where she literally begged him over the phone to forgive her. Finally, he gave in, but only after she said that she was ready to meet his desires, if only he would become the same as before again. Ravi agreed, and today was the first time they saw each other after a fight. They usually met at one of Ravi's friends. Lavi, holding on to him, said as they rode on a motorcycle, "Well, Mr. Stubborn, am I forgiven?" Ravi grunted displeasedly, as if he was still a little offended. "Please, Ravi, let's stop these stupid quarrels, okay?" she asked softly. Ravi felt a pang of conscience. He knew he was angry at her for no good reason. He became increasingly possessive in his feelings, which began to negatively affect his studies and daily life. Ravi knew he was in a difficult situation, but deep down, he couldn't ignore the desires that rose up within him every time he was around Lavi. "Forgive me, Lavi. I shouldn't have been so stubborn," he finally said. "It's okay, Ravi. Are we going to JIT?" "Where else?" It was a room in the apartment where his friend lived. In fact, it was a two-room apartment. Jitu's father owned the entire building, which housed about 20 families. His family lived in New Delhi, leaving their only son here to collect rent from all the tenants. Jitu was almost always on the move. He was a medical student and lent his room to friends, who used it as a place to meet girlfriends for happy moments. Ravi, being his closest friend, always enjoyed the privilege. Jitu ensured that the room was at his friend's disposal from 5 to 8 in the evening. Although they rarely stayed longer than an hour, Ravi always tried to stick to the 3-hour schedule. Entering the apartment, Ravi immediately began kissing his lover. Lavi felt sorry for her boyfriend. She had always shied away from kisses, but for the first time she decided that she should meet him halfway. She did not resist when he reached for her lips, and even opened her mouth slightly when their tongues began to intertwine. Both were delighted by each other's touch. Ravi felt in seventh heaven as he hugged and caressed his lover's soft body and pressed her to the bed. Lavi also liked the way her body responded to Ravi's caresses. She knew that she would not give him her virginity, that was certain, but she didn't know how far her boyfriend wanted to go. His innocent girl with big brown eyes and soft sounds made him feel an irresistible desire. "I love you, Lavi, I love you madly," he whispered. "And I love you, my dear," she replied. "Just don't quarrel with me anymore." "Never," he promised. He kissed her again, caressing her breasts through her clothes. "Ravi, isn't that a little careful?" she moaned. Ravi looked at her seriously and said, "No, I want to see your breasts." Lavi did not want to repeat their recent fights and allowed him to unbutton her camis, leaving her in her bra and shalwar. Ravi looked hungrily at her breasts, covered with an elegant bra. His desire was unbearable. "Take off your bra," he demanded, continuing to kiss her. Lavi hesitated. "Ravi, honey, we definitely don't." He grabbed her tightly by the waist and said threateningly, "Do you want me to tear it myself?" Her eyes opened wide in surprise. Seeing her reaction, Ravi pursed his lips in shame for his harshness. "Forgive me, dear. If you don't want to, then kissing is enough. I'm really sorry." Lavi smiled through her tears, biting her lip, and hugged him tightly, giving him a long kiss. She knew he cared about her. This was natural for young people who are in love. Perhaps she was taking it too seriously. She pulled away, looking straight into his eyes, her heart pounding. Then, with trepidation, She undid the clasp on the back of her bra and took it off, still covering her breasts with her hands. Ravi was filled with passion and admiration. His hand reflexively went to her denim-clad waist as she smiled at him. She wanted him so badly. He was her man, and their connection seemed completely natural. She stood in front of him, and her smile was like an invitation to the world of her warmth and tenderness. Ravi was completely mesmerized by her image. He realized that her beauty was a real miracle for him. She needed to be respected and appreciated. She seemed to him like a goddess who should be worshipped. Ravi pulled her towards him, gently hugging her waist, and they kissed. They both lay down on the bed, and Ravi pressed himself gently against her, their lips meeting in a long kiss full of feeling. She lay next to him, her head resting on his chest. Her softness and warmth were like a dream in which I wanted to stay forever. He slowly took off his shirt, enjoying the moment, and lay down next to her again, looking at her beaming face. Their touches were filled with tenderness and awe. Every minute was special and meaningful. She was created to give warmth and joy. She was the embodiment of tenderness, and Ravi could not be happier in this moment. Ravi was just a child. He couldn't handle the energy of this young figure. His first touch of his hand on her made her smile. A feeling of warmth and closeness spread through her body. For Ravi, it was a moment of amazing happiness that he had never experienced before. She lay next to him, with an open smile and curiosity in her eyes, and he was trying to understand how important it was to him. She began to feel a thrill from every touch. Her heart beat faster. These new emotions and sensations seemed exciting and unusual to her. She had never experienced such closeness, and this first time made the moment special. Ravi moved her hands to the side, giving him the opportunity to be closer. Ravi was grateful for this trust and the warmth they now shared. Ravi studied her with interest, feeling the tenderness and warmth of her body. These moments of intimacy were much more important to him than any external manifestations. He pressed closer to her, feeling joy and excitement from her presence, and she, in turn, responded to his touch with the same warmth. "Ravi, darling, please be gentle," she said quietly, shuddering slightly at his touch. He understood her request and tried to be more gentle, enjoying her presence and the beauty of the moment. He felt a special fire burning between them, a connection he would never forget. "I love you, Ravi," he said without noticing it. At that moment, he realized that he could not live without her. His whole world and his life were now centered around her. She just didn't know it, but it was absolutely clear to him. They looked at each other for a long time, their hearts beat in the same rhythm, and every moment together seemed more and more important and valuable to him. Ravi felt that being loved and important to him was the most wonderful feeling in the world. Their closeness filled her heart with tenderness and joy that she could not describe in words. As Ravi began to put on his shirt, she came up to him and hugged him like a faithful wife. "Are you happy, baby?" she asked him. "This is the best day of my life, Ravi." He hugged her and told her this. "I'm at your service, baby. Just order me to do whatever you want. I'm sorry if I forced you. I shouldn't have been so demanding of you. Don't ever apologize to me, darling. I love you, you know it." Both lovers looked into each other's eyes and pecked some more. At that moment, Ravi's phone rang. Sukanya was concerned that Ravi was a little later than usual. Her school ended at 4:30, and it was already 7 o'clock. She usually got home by 5:30, and if she was going to see her friends, she wouldn't be late after 6:30. She loved her girl. She was such a caring and loving daughter, and so cute too. She was so proud of her. When people said she was the spitting image of her mother, she beamed and puffed out her chest. Her son always teased her when such moments came. Laxman was a naughty 15-year-old child. He was not as attentive to his studies as her sister. Ravi was the smartest and topper in her school and now in college. Ramesh, Sukanya's husband, was very proud of her daughter's achievements. He showed them off to his friends. Sukanya was the subject of his long lectures on Ravi, as he said that she had robbed him of his brains, and he was sure that the world would be at her feet. Sukanya smiled at the warmth of her husband's frankness towards his daughter. Anyone who had Ravi as a daughter should be proud. She liked her husband's innocence and his open madness about his family. He spoiled his son too. As far as she was concerned, he always put her wishes before his own. From the moment he got married, he loved and gave. He encouraged her to work from the very beginning of her marriage. He was never on the side of his relatives, who, to her chagrin, advised him to force her to stop working. For him, it was never about the money. He wanted her to be active and informed about the world. In his opinion, a woman who knew the world was a very valuable asset in the family. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen and saw that Ranjit was calling. Her chest tightened as soon as she saw his name. She first met Ranjit at the hospital where she worked 5 years ago. He came there because his brother was hospitalized after an accident. Sukanya then noticed how he was trying to flirt with her and smiled to herself, realizing that she was inaccessible to him. But Ranjit was not one to give up. He was a realtor and owned a large business in the city. Sukanya could not resist his charm and charisma when he began showering her with gifts and persistently wooing her through the phone. Finally, after about 7 months, he dragged this heavenly beauty into bed. Since then, they have become constant lovers. Sukanya loved their intimate encounters. Ranjit was a well-built man, and any woman in passion would get everything she could want from him. Compared to her husband in bed, Ranjit seemed like a giant. In addition, he had excellent physical shape. Although he was married and had a child, he behaved like a free man, not embarrassed by anything in society. Sukanya admired his courage and happily shared his bed. "Hello, Ranjit, how are you?" "Hello, beauty, how is your divine ass?" She smiled at his words. He was crazy about her buttocks. "By the way, where are you now?" Ranjit owned a business in northern cities and was on the road almost all year. "I'm in Hyderabad now. I just arrived in the morning. I wanted to know if you were free for dinner and sex tonight." "Don't be so rude. I'm a little busy. The daughter should come home soon. Actually, I was going to call her. We'll talk about this tomorrow." Although she felt a little sad for him and herself, she cared about her family first. "But I'm coming back tomorrow. Next time, then, I'm sorry." Ranjit just sighed. "Okay, it will be like this. I'll take revenge on you later. Just kidding. Bye. Bye." She dialed her daughter's number and Lavi answered immediately. "Mom, where are you? I'm waiting for you." "Oh, sorry, Mom." Lavi moaned as Ravi pinched her breasts. "It's okay, Mom, I'm at Sheila's. Today is her sister's birthday." "Oh, I see. Will you be late?" "Yes, Mom. I'll be back late, but I promise I'll be home before 10. Sukanya sighed. "Okay, dear. Just be careful, okay? And call me if you need anything." "Of course, Mom." Sukanya sighed again. She was so attached to her daughter. They were almost like best friends, almost inseparable, and like two halves of the same heart, especially in matters relating to anything important. But her daughter is growing up, and she had to come to terms with this. She herself will soon turn 40. A mischievous thought flashed through her head. She took the phone. His wife's name flashed on Ramesh's mobile phone screen. "What happened, Sukanya?" he asked irritably. He was busy with business, the store was full of customers, and he hated being interrupted, even if it was by his wife. "My friend Sunurta came to see her mother. She's leaving tomorrow. I'm going to meet her." Of course, no problem. I'll be back very late, perhaps even after midnight." "Okay, be careful and call if you need anything." She hung up and immediately started dialing another number. "Hello," Ranjit replied. "Hello, sir," she said playfully. "I'm from hotel service. Give me your room number and I will come serve you." Ranjit laughed. "This is my bitch." Sukanya felt a pain in her lower abdomen when she heard this offensive word. Even her husband never allowed himself to use rude expressions. But she liked the nicknames that Ranjit came up with. She carefully wrote down the address. "Your bad girl will be with you shortly, sir. Will this make you happy?" "Very. Just get that amazing ass here ASAP." The receptionist in the hotel lobby looked twice at the woman who had just entered the lobby. She was absolutely amazing. She wore a simple short-sleeved blouse and a plain cotton sari with minimal makeup. But her graceful features, magnificent breasts, thin waist, and amazingly rounded hips made him tremble to the core. To the masculine depths, he became aroused, and before he knew it, he was drooling, one of which slid down the corner of his mouth. He quickly remembered professional ethics and put on a polite smile. "How can I help you, madam?" Sukanya smiled a very sweet smile that showed her good nature and wonderful character. "Mr. Ranjit is waiting for me. Could you tell me what his number is?" Ajay was not new to this matter. During his year of working as an administrator, he understood perfectly well that a woman's visit to a hotel guest is the norm. Usually this meant that she was a call girl. But he could not believe that this adult woman standing in front of him was a girl of easy virtue. She looked like a goddess, the personification of an exemplary housewife whom one can only idolize. He ran his eyes over the register. "Yes, ma'am. Number 411. "Thank you," she said and walked away, leaving him to watch the natural sway of her hips. But Ajay felt a little jealous. This guy, this lucky guy, he saw Ranjit earlier in the morning when he was checking in. He was a handsome man, strong, well-built, strong, tall, athletic, with that same assertiveness that is characteristic of real alpha males. Modern engine of civilization. The guard at the door approached him when one of the customers, in his rush, dropped a can from the table in the reception area. When order was restored, Bhima heard the young administrator sigh. He noticed that the guy's gaze was focused on the woman's hips. "This is a woman, sir," he remarked. Ajay was friendly with the staff and old Bhima was respected due to his 20 years of service to the hotel. "Yes, Bhima, a very beautiful woman. This Ranjit is just a lucky guy. Or is she?" Bhima shook his head, answering the unfinished question in the air. "I don't think so, sir. She's a virtuous woman, that's for sure. Look how she carries herself. I've been in this business too long not to see this. She was very considerate of everyone she interacted with from the moment she stepped off the rickshaw. She is a woman in a million." "Then what's going on between them, Bhaiya?" "I don't know, sir. But this man is a lucky man. He was lucky to spend time with her, whether in an intimate or professional setting." The old man sighed. He remembered how, a few minutes ago, she had helped the old man to his feet after he had been pushed aside by the crowd on the sidewalk. She helped the man to his feet, placed his glasses on his nose, and placed a cane in his hand, all the while smiling her million-dollar smile. A very truly beautiful woman on the inside. Hard to find these days. Ranjit opened the door after the third knock and smiled at the knocker. He took a moment to look Sukanya up and down. When she entered, he closed the door behind her. His gaze lingered on her wonderful ass and her curvy shoulders. His hand reflexively went to her ass as she sighed. "It's such a divine feeling," he smiled. But she tried to study her surroundings, trying not to pay attention to his hand. A luxurious room. She couldn't help but admire the way Ranjit lived. Royal power came from him. This was already a very expensive 5-star hotel, and his room would cost as much as an arm and a limb. "It pales before you, my beauty." Ranjit hugged her. "My God, I really miss this body." Just the feeling of Sukanya being near him made his heart beat faster. Sukanya also felt something special while being in the arms of this man. He was the epitome of confidence and vitality. He pulled her closer for a kiss, which she happily returned. Their kiss was filled with passion and warmth, as if their souls were meeting at that moment. Sukanya felt care and tenderness in his movements as their eyes met. "Who are you, and how did you captivate me so much?" he asked with a smile, slightly excited by her proximity. Sukanya laughed softly, responding to his compliments. He held her by the waist, his eyes lingering on her face for a moment, admiring her beauty and how beautiful she looked in her outfit. Although her clothes were modest, there was something attractive and mysterious about her appearance. He couldn't help but feel a special closeness between them, which made this moment even more exciting. Sukanya sighed, laying her head on his shoulder, and he kissed her cheeks. "When will you be back?" she asked him. "Tomorrow. HM." Is that a sigh of disappointment? His eyes smiled mischievously as she looked at him defiantly with all the secrets of the bedroom. I don't know, she replied. Shyness increased her beauty many times over. I think we have time, he asked her. Maybe there is, she giggled at his hope for a long session. I told Ramesh that I might be a little late. You know our opinion about Sunita. Ranjit smiled. During meetings, they had a daily routine like Sunita. Sunita was an excuse every time she came out to meet him. Don't tell me who Sunita is, she knows about us. Of course not. I told Sunita about my passion for saris and how one of my friends had this collection at home, and I told her that Ramesh gets angry when I waste time on the sari. I'm really addicted in this regard. She thinks Ramesh hates it when I spend time chatting with my friend about wardrobe-related things, and since I like to visit her every now and then, can she cover for me? She laughed and said yes. Ranjit reached his hands to her waist and hugged her softly, whispering, "Good idea, lady." He added, "Let's bring dinner to our room, okay?" Of course, but Ranjit, I don't like the situation in this hotel. I feel a little uncomfortable here, she replied. Ranjit nodded, looking into her eyes. I'm so sorry, baby. Next time I will be more careful in choosing the places. Don't worry about it. Now let's relax a little and enjoy the moment. She smiled back, touching his chest. He leaned down and kissed her, feeling the tenderness of their connection. Their gazes met, and this familiar, almost imperceptible tension arose between them, as if everything around was disappearing, leaving only the two of them. She felt their intimacy deepen every moment, and this feeling brought her joy and comfort. Ranjit ran his hand through her hair, and she responded to his touch with tenderness. They both knew that their connection was unique, and every moment spent together was filled with understanding and tenderness. She smiled, looking forward to a cozy evening together, enjoying each other's presence, not needing anything else except their shared closeness and trust. "How is my beloved Sue?" he asked with a soft smile. She smiled back. He wanted to hear her opinion, feel her affection and confirmation of their mutual feelings. Her laugh sounded like an answer that warmed his heart. She often found in him a strength and confidence that attracted her. She felt a special connection growing between them, based on trust and deep understanding. He always admired her sensuality, her willingness to meet him halfway and be there at moments when it was so important for both of them. Sukanya recalled their first meetings. She always felt his attention how he watched her, as if he was studying her, trying to understand. Gradually, their relationship became much more personal and deep, and she herself felt how it completely captured her. Each of their new dates had something special, not just romance, but also an emotional intimacy that grew and strengthened. She felt that their connection had become almost a necessity. Every time they met, she discovered something new. Ramesh, her husband, was always kind and caring, but alas, there was no spark between them that she felt with Ranjit. Ranjit looked at Sukanya with tenderness, enjoying her presence. Her caring and attention to him was like a breath of fresh air for him. He knew that his family life lacked the closeness that he had with Sukanya. His wife was a good woman, but more focused on her family and children than on their relationship. Therefore, he allowed himself to look for something outside the family circle. Ranjit has faced romantic relationships more than once, but what happened with Sukanya became something much more for him. It was not just a physical attraction, but something deeper, based on common interests and understanding of each other. He enjoyed the company of the housewife, smiled slightly, and asked again, "Will you answer me?" He loosened his grip on her braid, and she quietly looked at him, not knowing how to answer. He touched her shoulder, keeping his other hand free, and said, "You won't know what I'm up to unless you're honest with me. Tell me." She winced but nodded, wanting to ease the situation. He released her hair and gently ran his hand along her back, saying something encouraging. She liked his touch, his confidence, and although she felt a little embarrassed, she knew that his intentions were dear to her. "Yes, I missed this, Ranjit," she whispered quietly. "And what else?" he asked, smiling slightly. "I missed this feeling, our moments together," she answered, not hiding her emotions. "I missed it and I would like to feel it again." He nodded, his gaze softening. "I'm glad to hear that. I want you to know that I missed you too." He reached out to her slightly, and his hands were on her shoulders, hugging her tenderly. She looked at him gratefully, feeling the warmth of his touch. "Tell me what you want," he said, his voice quiet but demanding. She sighed and replied, "I want us to be together, for everything to be the same as before." He smiled, satisfied with her words, and touched her cheek. She felt relieved knowing that he understood her feelings. His words, gestures, all this awakened tender emotions in her. She knew their connection was real, and the value of these moments could not be overstated. "Do you know what I like about you?" he asked. She looked at him questioningly, waiting for an answer. "Your sincerity and the way you appreciate our moments together," he replied with a smile. She smiled back, feeling warmth and understanding fill the space between them. Lavi smiled as she sat behind her lover on his motorcycle. She deliberately pressed her breasts against his back, although there were 3 layers of clothing between them. Ravi felt the satisfaction of finally satisfying his long-standing need that had been haunting him for the past few months. However, on the other hand, he felt that he wanted even more from his beloved. Her body would become even more attractive to him over time, although he did not realize it yet. When he drove her to the bus stop, he wanted to pull this beauty and kiss her, but the presence of people around him held him back. Lavi smiled innocently, looking into his eyes. Her gaze expressed devotion, and he felt remorse that he had suddenly forced her to do something she did not like. But when she turned and boarded the bus heading to her house, all he could do was sigh heavily and let go. He couldn't wait for the next meeting. Lavi returned home to find her little brother playing a game on the console. It was 9 o'clock in the evening, and her mother was not at home. Her brother, Curtin, irritably said that her mother had gone to Aunt Sunita for some business that did not interest him at all, and that she had better stop distracting him from the game. Lavi sighed with a smile, looking at her brother, who was constantly busy with his business. She made some sort of curry of her own for dinner, and their father arrived at 9:30. He said that mother was late, and they had better have dinner themselves. After dinner, sitting in front of the TV while her father watched the news, she corresponded with Ravi on Messenger, discussing their relationship. She became more and more attached to him and really loved him very much. It was a nice feeling, she thought. She had never been so happy before. Ravi called her, and she went to her room to answer. They chatted like true lovers, excited, laughing, sharing their feelings. Ravi talked about his future and how to plan their life together. She listened with interest to his wise words. She wanted to share these thoughts with her mother. She thought that she should talk to Sukanya about Ravi. This thought made her politely end her conversation with Ravi. She dialed her mother's number, who always answered her daughter quickly. "Hello, darling," said her gentle voice. But Lavi noticed that her mother was a little out of breath. "Hello, Mom. Are you running?" "No, Lavi. Why would I run? Have you had dinner?" "Yes, Mom. We all had dinner. When will you come?" "It's almost 11. Didn't your father tell you? I'll be a little late. I'll probably be back after midnight. Don't wait for me. Go to bed. Sunita has a train tomorrow morning, and she asked me to do something for her." She was out of breath again, and Lavi asked, "Are you talking about something, Mom? You sound like you're really tired." Yes, Lavi. I'm a little busy right now. Go to bed. We'll talk in the morning, honey. Bye, Mom." Lavi hung up. Mom was busy. She was always busy when she went to Sunita Auntie. They had been best friends since college. Sunita came to Hyderabad in the summer. Her visits were short but frequent. Her mother visited her every time. Lavi loved how Sukanya looked forward to seeing her friend. She herself was friends with Ritika, but their relationship could not be compared with the friendship of her mother and Sunita. Such friendships were rare these days. She went back to calling her boyfriend. Meanwhile, after talking to her daughter, Sukanya felt a wave of emotions when Ranjit began to gently stroke her. He held her close, kissing and hugging her tenderly, and she completely surrendered to his touch. Ranjit was mesmerized by her beauty and grace. He appreciated every feature of her body, seeing in her the true embodiment of femininity. She lay next to him. Her slender body seemed to him a real work of art. This night belonged to just the two of them, and they enjoyed every minute. He was fascinated by her submissiveness and desire to please him, and she, in turn, was full of readiness to please him and share these tender moments of intimacy. Her eyes shone with passion and love, and every glance between them was filled with deep understanding and attraction. Sukanya felt her heart beating faster and faster, and she desperately wanted to experience the same closeness as him. Their connection was strong, and she knew she would do anything to make this man happy. She appreciated his care and attention, his desire to make her happy. These moments they spent together filled her with the tenderness and love they shared with each other. He liked this housewife position. He touched her and said, "Now show me how you can obey." She nodded and did as he asked, showing her affection and devotion. Ranjit watched with interest as she closely followed his every command, showing her affection for him. He pulled her in for a kiss, feeling the emotional connection between them restored. After that, they went to dinner. She set the table and served him food when they were both dressed. They laughed, discussing news from each other's lives. It has always been this way. Ranjit enjoyed the company of Sukanya, who was an excellent listener and always supported his jokes with her sincere laughter. After dinner, they sat together on the sofa, holding hands, and he told her about his affairs. Soon their conversation turned into a tender kiss, and they again felt close to each other. He was lying on the bed after taking a bath, and she was lying on his side, offering the very physical comfort that Ranjit craved. "How is your husband doing?" he asked her. "I think it's not bad." She sat on the bed and unbuttoned her palu and began unbuttoning her blouse. "We rented a new apartment and repaying the bank loan forced Ramesh to sell some of the shares he had invested in stocks." Ranjit observed her exquisite figure with her narrow waist and slender curves in her bra. She turned her back to him, giving the signal to unhook him. "Sukanya, can I help you with anything financially?" She turned to him after he unclasped her bra. "Please don't. I'm telling this as part of a conversation, not as a request for help. Ramesh never seeks help, and neither do I. I don't like accepting help from anyone except in dire circumstances. I know, Sukanya, I'm really sorry. Now let's get back to us and show me what a real bitch you are." At his command, she slowly stood up and undressed. Her sari fell first, followed by her petticoat. Ranjit whistled. "No underwear. You've clearly been waiting for this moment, haven't you?" She smiled and fell onto the bed next to him as he pulled her in for another kiss. Ranjit gently pulled her towards him, immersing himself in her embrace, feeling the warmth of her body. He slowly and carefully ran his hands over her shoulders and back, trying to catch every movement, causing her to sigh quietly, contentedly. "Oh, Ranjit, you are so gentle," she whispered, enjoying his touch and closeness. She closed her eyes and allowed herself to lose herself in this moment, in its warmth and care. Ranjit gently laid her on her back and continued to stroke her. His fingers slid over her body, and his every gesture was full of attention and tenderness. He paid attention to every curve, every line, teasing her and making her smile. She didn't resist, trusting him completely and allowing herself to relax. She simply put her hands on her side and looked at him, while he studied her regal figure with admiration. At that moment, her daughter called her, and she had to be distracted by a telephone conversation. Despite this, Ranjit remained close. His touches were still gentle and caring. She felt his presence and support even when talking on the phone. This helped her stay in the moment without losing the feeling of intimacy. After the conversation, she again turned her full attention to Ranjit, and they both immersed themselves in an atmosphere of warmth and love. Their intimacy continued, and time seemed to stand still, giving them the opportunity to fully enjoy each other. They exchanged glances, words, and touches for a long time until their feelings covered them completely. She felt joy and satisfaction enjoying this intimacy, which she had rarely experienced in her marriage. It seemed to her that everything was different with Ranjit. His care and attention were special, filled with passion, which she lacked in her relationship with Ramesh. He was the one who made her feel truly loved and wanted. Tell me, who does this body belong to? Ranjit smiled jokingly, but with a hint of seriousness in his voice. She replied, laughing but sincerely, "It belongs to you, Ranjit, only for you." Her eyes were full of tenderness, and she knew that these words meant much more than just an answer to his question. He smiled back and hugged her tightly, showing her how much she meant to him. Their intimacy was filled with tenderness and sincerity, giving them both a feeling of unity and love. She felt happy and grateful for these moments they shared together. Their embrace lasted for a long time, and every moment was filled with warmth, trust, and love that they gave each other. Next time I'll come for 4 or 5 days, honey. Your body has to be ready to accept whatever she can do. I'm looking forward to it, Ranjit. I'm really looking forward to it. I love it when you have sex with me. Ranjit approached her, and a deep connection was established between them, full of passion and mutual attraction. She felt his every movement, every gentle kiss and touch, completely surrendering to the moment. Their bodies moved in the same rhythm, as if they were one, and she felt in complete harmony with him. "You're mine, aren't you?" he whispered, looking into her eyes. "Yes, I'm yours," she answered, her voice trembling with emotion. He continued to move next to her, gently but insistently, immersing himself in this moment. She responded to his caresses readily, all her thoughts disappeared, giving way only to feelings that completely captured her. This man owned her heart and mind, and she loved it. Ranjit felt their connection growing stronger, sensing her reaction to him. He pressed himself against her neck, feeling her warmth, and immersed himself in these moments. Her skin was soft, and he admired her, enjoying her warmth and tenderness. She gently touched his hair, their closeness became even more touching. "I feel so good," she whispered, her voice sounding quiet and happy. At this moment they were one, forgetting about all worries and problems. Their hearts beat in unison, and they were happy, enjoying each other and the moment that seemed like an eternity. Their kisses were long and tender until they sank into a state of peace and tranquility, feeling completely satisfied and happy with each other. "Why don't we go somewhere and spend a few days together?" he asked, pinching her breast. "Are you serious? Do you think I can take time off from my busy schedule? What will I tell Ramesh?" "This is absolutely impossible, Ranjit." It's possible, honey. You just need to come up with a serious excuse, like saying you want a trip at work or something like that." As much as I would love to spend a few days with you, I won't be able to arrange it." He began to caress her breasts, and she enjoyed it. She knew that in a few minutes she would be ready for the next round. It was always like this between them. They were both insatiable, going from one session to the next. Her husband had never made love to her twice in one night. But Ranjit was like a lustful animal, always ready. He squeezed her breasts, and she pressed herself against his body. "You can make it happen, baby. Just figure out a way. Your idiot husband won't find out." Ranjit suddenly realized that he had said something he shouldn't have said. She gave him such a look that he immediately felt uneasy. She did not tolerate any jokes about her husband. Sorry, I'm so sorry." She pulled away from his embrace. "Watch your words, Ranjit. You know, I don't like this kind of talk about my husband." She seethed with anger at him, picking up her blouse and starting to put it on. He ran up to her and said, "I don't know what came over me. You know I have nothing against your husband. Forgive me, please don't get dressed." He stopped her hand as she tried to fasten the buttons. Her eyes still burned with rage. He engaged in many dangerous transactions in his real estate business. In his circle, he was the most in demand when it was necessary to complete the most complex transactions. He dealt with politicians, bullies, and all sorts of scum. He was practically fearless, but one look from Sukani made his knees shake. He unbuttoned her blouse again. "I'm really sorry, darling. What do you want me to do? I will do everything." She sighed heavily, giving up. She didn't want their rare meetings to be overshadowed by such petty quarrels. "Be careful in future." "Of course. So where are we?" "Oh yes, I pinched your breasts." "Ah," she moaned as he gently touched her shoulders. The blouse hung slightly off her shoulders while her partner held her close and kissed her neck. She felt like she was in heaven. He gently pulled her towards the bed. A moment later, they were already lying down, and she gently straddled him, feeling the warmth of his touch. She moved as if in a dance while he looked at her with admiration, caressing her back and gently touching her arms. Her blouse hung down the sides. Her movements were full of passion and tenderness. "You will go on vacation with me," he said, barely audible, with a smile. "How is this possible, my love?" she asked without stopping. He caressed her, supporting her movements and giving her confidence. She closed her eyes and focused on what she felt: the closeness, the trust, the freedom they shared. Ranjit stopped for a moment, and she, as if sensing his thoughts, continued to move, giving herself completely to the moment. She enjoyed this dance, losing herself in the sensations that brought her joy and warmth. A long hour passed before she gave in and allowed herself to be lost in this exciting and sincere moment of intimacy and love. Lavi was sitting with her friend Ritika in a cafe where their friends had gathered for the weekend. These meetings became a habit for school friends who organized such gatherings from time to time. "I heard Lavi was hooking up with some guy," Barrett said to the other seven, as if it was a secret, although it was far from the case. "Don't be smart, Bharat. Everyone already knows about this. We're just dating, and we are still teenagers, and don't come up with anything extra." Bharat smiled. "Oh, lady, I was just mentioning what I heard. Don't criticize me like that. How is he?" Lavi looked at her friends and noticed how they all wanted to hear an answer. Besides Ritika and herself, there were two more girls, Rohini and Padmini. They studied at another college and were close friends with Lavi since kindergarten. She met Ritika in the 8th grade, while she had known the others almost since time immemorial. The other two guys are Pradeep and Karthik. Pradeep was now living in Pune with his grandparents, as his parents had moved to the States, and they wanted him to stay safe with relatives. He had known Lavi since 5th grade. Kartik lived in Jaipur as his father's work required frequent travel. He had known Lavi since 8th grade. Lavi studied at the same school since childhood, and her friends formed a huge circle. These were the closest. She knew deep down that all three boys had liked her for the past few years, but at the same time she knew that she couldn't turn their childhood affection into something more because she was looking for something special, which she saw in Ravi. She replied, "What do you mean? Like him? He's fine, healthy," Pradeep said irritably. "Yes, lady, as if we were interested in his health. What kind of person is he? Is he joking like me?" Lavi noticed a hint of jealousy in Pradeep's voice, which she found endearing. Many times he gave her and her family tickets to matinee premieres of films. His father was involved with local businessmen. Pradeep was so caring towards her. Although he was frail, his hot temperament helped protect her whenever they went out. "Oh no, Pradeep. No one can match your wit. But he has this manner that makes him funny." Like the jester, Kartik laughed. He was the official monkey of the company. Lavi could laugh at this attack on her boyfriend, but her recent physical intimacy with Ravi has made her more attached to him. She felt she had to stand up for him. "Nothing like that, you idiot. He's like a little child. When he smiles or laughs, he does it like a baby. He's a little innocent, you might say." "Innocent? He is 3 years older than Lavi," Rohini noted. "He can teach you a lot, be careful. Innocence can be a trick to penetrate your—" At this moment, she chose the moment to sip the cocktail through the straw. The ambiguous hint caused the girls to giggle, while the boys rolled their eyes. Soon the topic changed, and they started discussing everything from their past hobbies to the latest news from their families. In a private conversation, the girls brought their heads together and delved into their girlish gossip. Padmini said, "Don't say that nothing started between you and Ravi, Lavi." "What do you mean?" Lavi asked with her usual innocence. "You know what I mean." She smiled a sly smile. Lavi exhaled as if it was completely unnecessary. She understood the essence of her friend's words, but still decided to defend her own. "Why do you always think in physical terms, Padu?" Rohini said to Padmina. Yeah, just because you're not a virgin doesn't mean Lavi has to lose her virginity. Rohini, Lavi screamed at her friend's words. Padmini was not one to be embarrassed by words. She replied to Rohini, "Yes, I'm not a virgin like you. In any case, this is about Lavi. Tell us plainly, dear. How do you and Ravi feel physically?" "You're disgusting." Lavi leaned back and began to play with the dessert. But her friends were not going to give up and continued to interrogate her. Ritika said, "Come on, Lavi, tell them." Ritika knew nothing about their physical intimacy, but hoped that her friend was no longer a virgin, like herself, who had lost her with her boyfriend a few months ago. "Nothing is happening here, girls. We just kissed," Lavi said, trying to keep a serious expression on her face. "Hum," all the girls said in unison. Their friend, the most noble girl in school, the most innocent and decent of everyone they had ever known, was making progress in relationships with guys, and this made them happy. "That's all we did." Lavi smiled slightly as she said this. "Come on, tell me more. I'm sure he touched your breasts," Rohini interjected. Lavi chose to remain silent. "What? Speak already?" Padmini nudged her. Lavi tried to distract them. "How are things going with your cousin?" Padu sighed. "Yes, everything is going well, but it's already cold. He left for the States. We communicate. He still confesses his eternal love through messengers." Rohini added, "Well, it happens. Didn't you almost live in the same house last summer?" "And I understand that you are still living with someone," Padmini noted. Rohini told her story. "Hey, it was only a week. Now we only meet from time to time. But actually, we were talking about Lavi's breasts." Lavi was again interrogated endlessly until she gave in. "Yes, he touched her, but that's all." "Ooh!" The girls shouted joyfully and clapped their hands. At that moment, the boys approached them. Pradeep asked, "What are you talking about?" "Nothing, girl talk." Karthik's mobile beeped and he said, "Hey, I have to go." "Why?" everyone asked in unison. "My cousin Vivek is waiting for me. We have some fun things to do." The mood of the girls, except Lavi, changed instantly. Vivek was a university sports champion. He studied for a Bachelor of Arts and actively pursued a career in athletics. He was like a loose cannon with his father's wealth behind him and a restless personality. He was a notorious womanizer and a winner of the hearts of girls in college and school, wherever he went. Rohini said, "Has he arrived yet?" "Yes, but he won't come in. He'll be waiting on the road." Padmini moaned, "Invite him. At least let him drink something." Lavi was stunned by her friend's behavior. Both had boyfriends, but they were fascinated by Vivek. More than once, she had to listen to long stories from her friends about the merits of this star athlete. "Here he is," said Kartik. And then they saw a tall, slender guy with wavy dark hair falling over his forehead, sitting on his expensive motorcycle. He started the engine by turning his wrist, and the engine roared loudly. Rohini, Padmini, and Ritika were almost drooling. Lavi also noted that the guy was really handsome, but is that a reason to behave like that? The boys were overcome with jealousy. Kartik waved goodbye to everyone, ran outside, and soon left with his cousin. Rohini, Padmini, and Ritika remained almost silent the entire time Vivek was taking Kartik away. He noticed a small group of his cousin's friends and waved in greeting. The girls' hearts began to flutter. Rohini even waved back, and Ritika and Padmini giggled as if they were being tickled, so much so that their laughter could almost be heard as a groan. Pradeep and Bharat tried to divert the situation by discussing which movie to go to, but it didn't help. Only an hour later, the company went to the chosen cinema. While the boys were buying tickets, Ritika said, "The guy has really matured, hasn't he?" Padmini and Rohini nodded in unison. "Yes, he has become more muscular and charming." Kartik could invite him," one of them said. Lavi shook her head. "Come on, Padu, you're exaggerating. Yes, he's cute, but you shouldn't even have doubts about your boyfriend." Padmini smiled slyly. "Who knows, maybe they will." Ritika also giggled. Me too. He's so hot, Lavi, don't deny it. Rohini added, yes, and after hearing Rajini's story, I am also ready for whatever he has to offer. What do you mean? All the other girls asked curiously. Rohini replied, you know Rajini, my cousin's friend. A few months ago, she started an affair with Vivek. She already had considerable experience with guys, but when she described their meetings, she almost peed herself with delight. The guy really knows how to please a woman. You mean, in terms of the one? Padmini asked almost breathlessly. Rohini's voice clearly betrayed her lust. Careful, girl. There are people around, Ritika playfully scolded her friend. Several guys have already paid attention to them because of the provocative nature of the moan. All the girls had stunning figures, but the tall and stately beauty in white, like a queen bee, Lavi, especially stood out. Lavi shook her head. You guys are crazy. Rohini replied irritably. Listen, Lavi, we are not trying to impress anyone. What we are discussing are facts. We love this handsome guy. He is handsome and also has some qualities that surpass his age. He changes girlfriends like gloves. But that doesn't mean he's not attractive. I like him and would like to spend time with him. Lavi looked at her with a dissatisfied look. Ritika calmed the situation. Hey, take it easy, girls. We came here to have fun. Let's change the subject. Oh, here are the guys with our tickets. Karthik and his muscular cousin were sitting at the bar drinking. Before that, they went to his friend's house, where they chatted a little and played video games. Later, they came to a bar, Vivek's favorite place. They just started their first glass, discussing various topics. Although Karthik was a little younger than Vivek, they understood each other perfectly in everyday matters. They have been friends since childhood and have experienced a lot together. Karthik knew that his cousin was always popular with girls. Vivek constantly told him that his time would come and advised him to be patient. Are you still going out with your friends? Vivek asked. Yes, we are meeting. Me and Pradeep are leaving again, so we decided to get together. Okay, strong friendships are important. Wasn't it Lavanya who was with you in the cafe today? Lavi, yes, that's her. Lavi, then, said Vivek. Why haven't you hooked up with her yet, cousin? Karthik frowned. What do you mean, stirred up, Vivek? She's a beautiful girl, the most beautiful I've ever seen. Why are you sitting here and not taking her out on dates? Karthik looked at him with irritation. Hey, she's not that kind of girl. She's very good. Vivek laughed. I didn't say she was bad. She is good and virtuous, I admit that. But she also has desires. She also has needs. Why do you say that, dude? Sorry if I offended you. I'm just saying what I think. She is a beautiful girl with an amazing figure who would look better in your arms than in anyone else's. That's all. Karthik shook his head. I'm sorry, Vivek, if I was rude. She's a good girl. She has never spoken to anyone the way you speak. Maybe you're right, but I don't know. Anyway, dude, I'm out of this conversation. I don't care. So you don't mind if I try? Vivek asked. Karthik took a sip of beer and said, What do you mean, I'll try? You know what I mean. Karthik just shook his head. You don't know Lavi, dude. She's not your typical girl. She's very serious. And recently, I started dating someone. If she dates someone, she takes it very seriously. She is too mature for her age. You can't lure her with standard tricks. Vivek just smiled, throwing back his wavy hair. I just needed to know you wouldn't mind. Hey, everyone has their own life. I don't care. Good luck. That was all Vivek wanted to hear. Sukanya was sitting in her office in front of the computer, looking at her bills, when Kittu, the office assistant, approached her with tea. Tea, madam. No, thank you, Kittu, Sukanya smiled, going back to work. Kittu looked at her beautiful back, covered with a modest blouse. She was pure perfection. In his nightly fantasies, she was his lover, with whom he had sex until he screamed. He was not as interested in actresses as Sukanya was in his dreams. She was his ideal for all these fantasies. On his smartphone, he already stored many photos of her, taken secretly while she was immersed in work. The office where she worked had 5 more cubicles. 2 of the booths were occupied by women, Kaveri Madam, an elderly lady, and Renuka, a plump, middle-aged woman who works as an accountant. The other 3 belonged to men. Kitu knew that Anand Sir and Lakshman Sir were real lustful types who had their eyes fixed on the beautiful Sukanya. They were middle-aged men, somewhere in their 30s, with failed personal lives. They often made jokes that were rude and inappropriate to discuss in front of women. However, the women in their office did not judge them harshly. Kaveri and Renuka believed in making do with what they had and accepted their humor as inevitable. Sukanya felt uncomfortable with these crude jokes, but did not make any comments, believing that the men were simply trying to create a relaxed atmosphere in the office. The third man in their accounting department, Jai Sir, was an older man who was almost 60. Tall and strong, he had a calm personality and was something of a father figure to his colleagues. Jai Sir was an expert in his field, always gave good advice, and deserved respect. He singled out Sukanya for her hard work, straightforwardness, and kind nature. At the beginning of her work, it was he who trained her and helped her get used to it. She felt that Jai was protecting her from the backbiting of other men in the department. Meanwhile, Kitu, having served the evening tea, was secretly watching Sukanya from outside the office. The side view, which showed off the graceful curves of her breasts, excited his teenage hormones. Although her veil covered her chest, the curves of her figure made him nervous. He noticed that Anand Sir, a thin and mean lust, was sitting behind his glasses and also looking at her with undisguised interest. He squirmed in his seat, trying to hide his excitement. Lakshman, who was supervising the work of other employees, came to Sukanya's desk and started a conversation. "Have you checked the numbers from last month's IQ reports, Sukanya?" he asked. Sukanya nodded respectfully. "Yes, sir." She respected all her colleagues, despite the fact that she was almost the same age as Anand. Anand, bending down, looked into the neckline of her transparent sari and enjoyed the view of the small cleavage that accidentally appeared. This gave him a false sense of superiority. "You are a genius at calculations, Sukanya. I've never seen anything like this before," he said with a smile, trying to flirt. Sukanya responded with a polite smile, knowing that his flirting was nothing more than a stupid attempt to impress. "By the way, about calculations, I know one joke." Anand began. "Is this a BMW?" Jai Sir interrupted him, looking out the window near which he was sitting. Lakshman jumped off the table and quickly ducked into his office. The presence of the BMW on the hospital grounds clearly indicated a rare visit from the chairman. One day, Lakshmana was severely reprimanded for sitting on his desk and chatting with his colleagues during office hours. It was a shameful moment, and he didn't want it to happen again. But before he could sit down, which he did, he realized that Jai was playing a joke on him as everyone started laughing. The older man just said, "No, this is some other car, just an optical illusion." Sukanya looked at him and smiled. Lakshman was embarrassed, feeling like a coward. Anand dropped a stack of papers next to Sukanya's desk. His plan was to look at her magnificent figure as she lifted them. Sukanya, deciding to help, readily fell into the trap, and the men got the opportunity to admire her luxurious cleavage. Jai knew how Anand and Lakshman behaved with the innocent Sukanya. This made him angry. He thundered, "Don't act like a clumsy monkey, Anand. If you can't keep your things on the table, sit on the floor instead. You don't even deserve management to give you a seat. You already have a lot of mistakes in your work. Check all financial statements for last month, and if you finished, check again. If I see even one mistake, I guarantee that management will know about all your mistakes in the reports, and there are many of them." Anand's excitement evaporated, replaced by fear at the sight of his senior colleague's eyes. "Sorry, Jai Sir." When the workday came to an end and everyone began to get ready to leave, Anand was still dealing with a new task imposed on him by a colleague. He was annoyed because he knew how angry the older man could be. Although they were equal in position, everyone respected Jai for his excellent work and behavior. The same was true for Anand. Sukanya and Jai left the building while the others went about their business. You shouldn't have been so strict with Mr. Anand, Jai, sir. He is a very nervous person. Often something is placed wrong on the table. Jai shook his head. Don't mention those two idiots, dear. I've already covered a lot of mistakes for them. They're better suited for armpit scratching than number crunching. The chairman has a misconception about the excellence of our department. I have a lifelong commitment to leadership. I don't want to betray their trust. But on the other hand, these two have families to feed. Sukanya was touched by the older man's love for his subordinates. He loved his department and didn't want anyone to suffer. How is Lavanya? She's doing well, Sukanya smiled shyly. She is as beautiful as her mother. How about Rangjit? He is busy at work, and when he is at home, he is always pleased by the presence of his son and daughter. He praises them so much that I'm sure even the troubadours didn't sing so much about their monarchs. That's the kind of heart a father has, child. What can I say? How is Aunt Rima? She is what a wife should be. Too meticulous. The only sweet thing about her is her diabetes. Sukanya frowned at his joke. You are so angry, Sir Jai. She's the best woman. He nodded, smiling. When they reached the parking lot where his scooter was parked, he suggested, Shall I give you a ride home, honey? Sukanya usually returned home by bus or car. No, sir, I'll go by bus. Okay, honey. Sukanya looked at the mall opposite the office and remembered the earrings her daughter asked to buy. She kept forgetting, but now she decided that she could pleasantly surprise her daughter. She entered the mall and headed towards the jewelry section. She began to look at the collection of jewelry. Her attention was attracted by earrings in the form of large rings. Sukanya smiled, remembering the moment when she and Ranjit were watching TV in the hotel room after one of their hot dates. The actress wore similar earrings, and Ranjit, while playing with her breasts and biting her earlobes, said that he would like to see her in these jewelry and nothing else. The mere thought of her lover made her chest tighten. She couldn't help but get excited thinking about her lover. A month had passed since their last meeting at the hotel, and the memories of those nights fueled her desire. She, being a disappointed housewife, more than once indulged in self-satisfaction. She had previously condemned the very idea of self-gratification, but now she could not stop. Although it made her feel guilty, she continued to do what she felt was necessary. She thought many times to call him and talk, but her sense of decency stopped her. Besides, her husband was the best man in her life. He treated her like a queen, and that hasn't changed even now. He showered her with love that she could barely stand. She sometimes felt guilty about her affair, but also realized that she could not resist. Her desires seemed to be out of control. They were like a fountain of emotions that she simply could not ignore. While she was looking at the jewelry, a young salesman approached her and politely asked, How can I help you, madam? Sukanya smiled at him and replied, I'm looking for a pair of earrings for my daughter. The guy was embarrassed by her warm smile. She was like an angel descended from heaven. It had been a difficult morning. The customers were rude, many casually inspecting the goods or not even bothering to look him in the eye. He had just started working here, and in the first 2 months he had already become disillusioned with people. But over time, he began to get used to the indifferent attitude. And here in front of him stood this woman who spoke to him with respect. He smiled widely. Oh, I have what you need, madam. Look, this is new in the market. Teenagers are just crazy about it. Sukanya took the silver earrings in her hands and examined them carefully. The young man could not resist noticing her beauty. Her figure was like that of an experienced model with proportions that could drive any man crazy. Her chest rose and fell with every breath, drawing his gaze. Her lush hair and innocent eyes drove him crazy with desire. Sukanya, although she was looking at the earrings, felt that his eyes were sliding over her figure. She noticed how his gaze lingered on the small neckline of her dress. She didn't want to encourage him. The seller was a tall, thin young man with good manners. Despite his thin build, he had broad shoulders and a velvety voice. And then she noticed the bulge in his trousers. She turned away from him sadly. She felt awkward, But why was she embarrassed because of the guy or because of herself? She wondered if she felt sorry for him because he was embarrassed or because he couldn't help himself. Or maybe she was ashamed because she momentarily imagined this body naked. What does she allow herself? She reproached herself for such rude thoughts. What happened to her? Her hormones were apparently going crazy. An image of Ranjit popped into her mind. Her chest tightened again with excitement at the mere thought of her lover. She bit her bottom lip, fighting the memory. The seller, noticing how she bit her lip, seemed to have stopped in time. She looked so erotic at that moment. A strange sparkle appeared in her eyes, as if someone had touched her most intimate place. He couldn't help but feel aroused at the sight of it. But it only lasted for a moment. The next second she came back to reality and looked at him, asking a question about the price of the earrings. The guy answered automatically. He dreamed of kissing those divine lips, possessing that delightful body, taking possession of her. But he could only watch. She was someone else's wife. Some lucky balding man was her husband. Sukanya noticed the helplessness in his eyes. She realized the trance he was in and distracted him by asking about the price. She tried on one pair by simply holding them to her ears. The position in which she stood made her breasts seem even more impressive, which turned the guy on even more. Although she did not ask for his opinion, he said, "These earrings suit you very well, madam." She blushed when she heard the boy. It was another strange man commenting on her beauty, and the boy was honest too. She was a housewife, and earrings were more popular with teenage girls. "They are not for me. I'm looking for one for my daughter." "Sorry, ma'am. Sorry if I sounded cocky, but I was honest in my opinion." She smiled at him. She couldn't help but admire the boy's blunt truth. She didn't want to upset the boy, so she asked his opinion about other turquoise lovers. He was encouraged by her question. Each time she put them to her ear, and he honestly expressed his opinion on all her questions. Sukanya enjoyed this little banter session. "You look great in those silver pendants, ma'am. They complement your perfect beauty." Sukanya noticed that he became more open in his comments. He commented on her beauty without any bars. Although she felt that he was giving too much leeway, she allowed him to do so because she did not want to ruin his atmosphere. He noticed his eyes become more confident as he looked down at her without any inhibitions. When he looked into her eyes, he looked at her with a certain amount of masculine flirtation, which she secretly liked. He was more explicit, looking at her bust and ass. He looked at her navel as she raised her hands to see the jewelry sitting on her ears. When the session was over, Sukanya bought 4 pairs of rings, 3 for her daughter and 1 for herself. The boy was also pleased with the purchase. "It was very nice to meet you, ma'am. I hope you return to the store for more purchases." "I could. I can also show you some saris if you want, ma'am." "No, no. It's time for me to go. In any case, thanks for the help." "It was just a pleasure, ma'am." As Sukanya walked away from him, he looked at her wonderful ass slipping out of his reach. He wanted so badly to hug her from behind. Although Sukanya appeared calm and reserved, she was excited by the boy's interest in her. She took it as a compliment. She wanted to go home and suppress her desires. Only a cold shower could cure her anxiety. Several weeks have passed since their first meeting. Lavi and Ravi continued to meet at Jitu's apartment. Their fussing continued in the same spirit. They limited themselves to only massages and kisses. Ravi didn't demand anything more from her than that. But he demanded that she be available to him more often, perhaps more than twice a week, which never happened. Lavi noticed that Ravi was becoming increasingly possessive and irritated if she did something without his consent. He felt uncomfortable when she wore a sleeveless t-shirt. He didn't like it if she didn't call him on certain days. It irritated him even more when she went out with friends without informing him about it. Sometimes she felt like she was dating a child. He was picky and became even more picky. But what angered him the most was the attention other men paid to Lavi or her opinion of them. It wasn't necessarily personal or sexual, every little thing set him off. Lavi wore a yellow tight salwar to college that day, and her figure complemented the outfit perfectly. A few guys even whistled while she waited for the bus. He instantly took her away from there, almost in a fit of jealousy. As soon as they entered Jithu's apartment, they started kissing passionately. Ravi sat down on a chair, pulled Lavi onto his lap, and squeezed her breasts over her clothes, causing Lavi to moan softly. "Shouldn't we talk first?" "We can talk while we continue," he replied, kissing her neck, which had always been Lavi's weak spot. She tried to find a topic to talk about. "Do you know Jatin, our senior comrade?" Ravi instantly felt the hair on the back of his neck tense. The mention of another man was enough for him to become wary. "What's wrong with him? And who is he anyway?" he asked, looking into her eyes. "Didn't I tell you? This is our eldest, Padman's cousin, and one of the best chess players in the city. He met Ritika and me and invited us to the tournament the following Sunday, as spectators." "Why did he do this?" "He's just a friend," Lavi said, immediately biting her lip. Ravi's eyes already expressed a completely different feeling. She didn't want to make him jealous anymore. He removed his hands from her chest and placed them on her hips. Lavi insisted on staying on his lap, trying to make up for her mistake. "You should go, shouldn't you? I'm probably bored of you. Jatin will be a great distraction, and he is your good friend." She turned to him, throwing her arms around his neck. "Sorry, that's not what I meant. No, it's me who should apologize. I brought you here against your wishes." "Please, Ravi, forgive me," she said, looking pleadingly into his eyes. He looked at her, trying to make a decision. He understood that she didn't mean anything bad. Lavi looked at him slyly and, putting her hand under the camis, unfastened the clasp of her bra, which Ravi easily noticed by her movements. Looking into his eyes, she pulled her bra out from under her clothes. "Do you accept my apology?" she asked, looking at him with her innocent, beautiful eyes. "Should I?" "Yes, please. Don't think. Please think again. Forgive me, Ravi." "Why should I?" "Because if you forgive, you can pinch my breasts," she said seductively, pecking him on the lips. He smiled. "I will do this in any case, regardless of the circumstances." "How do you like it, dear?" he asked, looking at her half-closed eyes, full of pain and pleasure. "It's nice," she admitted. "Oh, you get pleasure when you shouldn't," he chuckled. Ravi carried her to the bed and removed her camis, leaving Ravi half-naked. He untied the laces of her salwar, and she tried to stop him with her hand. "Today, I will see you completely naked." He had long demanded that she take off everything and show him what her mother was wearing. But she always refused, afraid that he might cross the line. Her virginity was the most precious treasure she and her family held. She didn't want to take any risks. "No, Ravi, it's better not." "Why?" "I'm your lover," he said with a hint of irritation. "It's true, but please don't." He tried to persuade her. "I promise, honey, I'll just watch." Nothing more. She shook her head. "I'm afraid it won't stop at one thing." "Trust me, dear." He kissed her, and she answered him. "I love you, Ravi." "I love you too, sweetheart," he said, slowly removing her salwar without taking his eyes off her figure, now clad only in her underwear. Her narrow waist and wide, feminine hips made him almost lose control of himself. She lay down on the bed, and he carefully pulled off her panties. The first look at her naked body became something unforgettable for him. She was an amazing girl, one of the most beautiful he had ever seen. Half of his friends were in love with her. Lavi, a modest girl with impeccable character, now lay naked in front of him. When he saw her tender outline, his heart beat faster, and he felt a wave of excitement. He gently held her to him, kissing her belly, and Lavi moaned in pleasure when his lips touched her skin. He continued to caress her, feeling her slight trembling. Her body seemed to glow, and she couldn't help but smile when she felt his touch. He looked at her with admiration. His voice was full of warmth and care. "You are very beautiful, Lavi." He kissed her palm gently, then took her hand and pressed it to his chest so she could feel how hard his heart was beating. Lavi swallowed, feeling a little thrill, realizing that there was a special connection between them that could turn her world upside down. He asked her to stay close, and she carefully laid her head on his shoulder, closing her eyes and feeling his breath. Ravi enjoyed her presence, her gentle face with delicate features, which reflected emotions. His love for her was sincere, and it was enough for him to simply be near her, feeling her warmth. Lavi said quietly, "Please stop, Ravi," her voice sounding soft and sincere. He understood her and accepted her request. He lay down next to her, kissed her forehead, and assured her, "Trust me, honey, I will always be there and take care of you. I promise." They kissed, and Lavi whispered, I love you so much." "I love you too, sweetheart," he replied, looking at her tenderly. Her hugs were full of feelings, and seeing her happy was enough for Ravi. They lay together, enjoying each other's warmth, and Ravi was sure that his love for Lavi had become the most important part of his life. He was afraid of losing her, but knew that he would always protect her. He kissed her, feeling how much he needed her. Lavi, hugging him, felt her love for him growing deeper. Each touch made their connection stronger. She cared about Ravi and didn't want him to suffer because of her. But she realized that if they continued, her virginity would be a thing of the past. She decided to cut their meetings short, but she wasn't sure if he would accept it. She hugged him tightly. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Nothing. I just think I'm falling more and more in love with you." He smiled. "Is this bad?" "No. Ouch." She screamed when he started playing with her breasts again. "Are we taking our time with this?" "I don't think so." He squeezed her breasts, and she, closing her eyes, surrendered to his caresses. "Thank you, Ravi." "For what?" He looked into her eyes, and she smiled. "For the feelings you give me when you do this," she whispered. He smiled mischievously. "For fun." She felt a thrill just hearing the word. "Yes, for this. Thanks for this. It was truly wonderful." "Don't worry, lady. You'll get a lot of it." In the evening after dinner, Sukanya showed her purchase to her daughter. Lavi squealed with pleasure. "Which one is mine, Mom?" she asked with excitement. Ramesh smiled at the happiness in his daughter's eyes. She was such a sweet and beautiful girl. He was very proud of her. Sukanya also beamed happily at her daughter's joy. Her daughter probably thought she only owned one set or two at most. A surprise awaited her. Of course, they did not cost an exorbitant price, but they were expensive. With the exception of these arches, they are all yours, dear. "Really," Lavi squealed and hugged her mother. "Thank you very much, Mom. They're all so good, and they look so beautiful too. I love them all." Sukanya kissed her forehead and said, "Try them first, dear." But the mother knew she shouldn't have asked. Her daughter looked so beautiful even in her colorful night outfit. These earrings would only complement her already established high image. And so it was. They looked great on her daughter. She even saw the distrust in her husband's eyes in the mirror. Ramesh was amazed that her daughter could look so different even to him. As Lavi happily retired to her bedroom with her gifts, Sukanya looked at the curved earrings. But she couldn't help but notice the giant silver rings she gave her daughter. She was fascinated by them. They looked so good on her daughter and even on herself. Returning home in the evening, she tried them on. Out of mischief, she dressed in her daughter's t-shirt and let her hair down. She felt that youth had come to her. She was touched by her own photograph. For a moment, it seemed to her that she must be like her daughter, who was being pursued by young suitors. Lavi was probably here, she didn't know it, but she felt like she belonged to the age group of crazy teenagers wandering around the city looking for some physical company. Before she could control herself, she called Ranjit. When he answered her, there was an undisguised surprise in his voice, because she rarely called him. It was always him who called her. "Is this a dream?" She giggled like a schoolgirl. "No, that's not true. I just wanted to know if it is cold in Delhi at this time of year." "You called me to find out about the weather." Sukanya wanted him to know that she was calling him for some purpose other than the fact that she was horny and just wanted to hear his voice and maybe stroke her guilty pleasures. She expressed her doubts with conviction. Yes, actually one of my friends is going to Delhi, and she wanted to know what the temperature was like there so that she could pack winter clothes for herself and her family. And this friend of yours didn't have modern media help to get his weather information. She didn't think he would ask so many questions. She just wanted a first-hand account. Listen, if I'm interrupting something. No, baby, you're not interfering with anything. It's actually very cold here. I guess I could use your hot body at night to keep me warm. His voice and his sexy talk began to crawl over her skin like the warmth of heaven. It was like a response to her fire. It's very bad for you to say that. And you call me that too. I told you. Yes, I know, baby. And in general, how is your wonderful body? Does your husband take good care of him? She smiled and said, maybe. Could you do me one favor, please? What is this? Can you touch yourself, honey? He spoke quietly, but his voice penetrated into the very heart. She sighed heavily. This barely audible sound reached him, and he realized how much it touched her. She put her hand into her panties, but doubts still lingered in her heart. Why would I do this? She asked, as if testing her own desires. Don't resist, my love. I know that you want this, and I'm here. His words sounded enveloping, calmed her, and at the same time ignited the flame inside. Her breathing became ragged, and she could hardly control herself. My beautiful, what happened? What made you so worried? Why did you call me? I'm here to listen to you. She took a deep breath, almost deciding to tell everything. Tell her how she wanted him to be near, how much she dreamed of warming his arms, how she imagined them together. Her hands slowed, and she finally moved them away, feeling that this intimacy with him did not require extra words or actions. It was already filled with trust and sincerity. Nothing, Ranjit. I just wanted to talk to you. So, talking about the weather was an excuse. She bit her lip and giggled. No, I still needed information. So you don't want to tell Daddy about your little pranks today, my dear busty beauty? I don't have anything to tell you, dear. What did you do today? As usual, I went to the office and returned. On the way, I bought jewelry for my daughter. Ranjit asked slowly. What happened in the store? Did you meet anyone there? Sukanya smiled and mentally praised her lover for his resourcefulness. He was almost getting to the point. No one except the seller. Was he handsome? It seemed inappropriate for Sukanya to respond to this. I didn't pay attention to it, Ranjit. Remember and tell me, dear. Yes, he was cute. Describe what he looked like. Tall, very young, probably a little over 20, with a low baritone voice. So, better than me, of course. No, she answered reflexively. Ranjit smiled. Why, what is so special about me? I'm old, I'm already over 40, baby. But Ranjit knew that she was telling the truth. The guy might have been cute, but so does he. Many of his friends thought he was attractive, and Sukanya knew about his personal merits, and he knew that Sukanya had already begun to blush. Sukanya knew deep down that they both knew the answer. She liked being with him. She may not have expressed it openly, but every time they met and he touched her, her reaction spoke for itself. She felt admiration for him, even if she couldn't say it out loud. The hot, young housewife couldn't get out of her cocoon of decency. She needed a hint. What is it, my dear beauty? What's so special about me? She was silent, and with this silence she answered their common doubts. My sweet girl, do you miss our meetings? This question seemed to spur her emotions. She felt a wave of desire wash over her and couldn't help but moan softly as he continued to listen and smile. You're so naughty, you really want to be around, don't you? She moaned softly again, feeling the tension building inside her. This guy reminded you of me, right? You can't wait for our next meeting, right? Oh, yes, she answered in a rush of emotions. It was a wonderful feeling to know that Ranjit was with her, even if only in her thoughts for now. She remembered their moments together, and this made her desire even stronger. We'll be together soon, honey, he said, and her heart skipped a beat at his words, which sounded like a promise. Her body was filled with emotions, and she felt them completely embrace her, giving her a feeling of peace. It took her a while to come back to reality, but she did so, smiling and realizing that their meeting would soon take place. Coming to her senses, she said, "Sorry." "For what, Sukanya?" "I shouldn't have." She hesitated. "You shouldn't have, honey. Don't worry. You called and did what you needed to do. Don't think about it too much. Just make sure that your amazing, sexy body is available to me when I ask." She bit her lip and nodded. "Fine. Well, how are you doing?" They talked a little about everyday things, laughed at jokes, and other little things. Later, when she hung up, she realized that she could not have done without this conversation. Sukanya remembered the evening episode when she went to the bedroom. She quickly changed into her night dress. Approaching her husband, she felt him hug her. She felt his arousal as they lay in the spoon position. She pressed herself against his arousal as he kissed her. Sukanya was happy as she had been continuously horny since the evening and had some fun awaiting her with her husband. "Have you seen the decorations?" "Yes, I saw it." His voice was indifferent. "Lavi looked so good in them, didn't she?" "Yes, sure. How would you feel if I put them on for you?" He said, "But they look like they belong to the younger generation. I mean Lavi's age group." They both knew he said the wrong words. He knew he had hurt her. He kissed her to cover up his mistake, but Sukanya was not angry with him. He said what was on his mind. She undid 2 buttons of her nightgown so that he could admire the magnificent view of her wonderful cleavage. And he did it too, but looked at it casually. He did not consider this sight anything unusual. He kissed her passionately, and she reciprocated. He pressed her breasts against the fabric. She offered him affection as she undressed, and he reciprocated for a moment. He then moved closer to her as she lay on her back and gently pulled her nightgown aside. Ramesh was very excited. He knew his imagination was playing tricks on him, but he tried to focus on the present moment and the intimacy with his wife. After a few minutes of caressing, he felt himself approaching his limit. Sukanya understood that he was close and knew that this was a rare moment of calm and relaxation for him. He kissed her neck and hugged her tiredly, lying next to her. Sukanya felt that her excitement had not yet subsided, but she kissed her husband tenderly as he began to fall asleep. She pressed herself against him, letting her thoughts take her elsewhere, but maintaining the warmth of their closeness. It was 5:30 in the morning when Ramesh woke up. He wanted to fall back into his beautiful sleep, but was stopped by the superb, innocent beauty of his wife. Sukanya slept in her light nightgown and showed off her aura of attractiveness at the peak of her attractiveness. She looked like an angel with her delicate, delicate features. The light pink nightgown she wore reflected the peaceful, happy sleep state she was in. Perhaps she was sleeping, he thought. He kissed her lightly on the cheek, as if she were a sensitive 2-month-old baby. She moved slightly from the touch on her cheek and fell into a stupor again. Ramesh always considered himself lucky to have Sukanya. She was his support. She supported him in all his endeavors. She took care of their children. He had nothing but a store to run. When his business was in a very weak state, she planned her financial affairs very cleverly. She even tried to survive those difficult times. But all this time there was only a smile on her face. She never reflected their meager wealth on her children. Fortunately, those days are over. Although they weren't filthy rich, they had a house and were looking to buy another one. They still had a daughter they could marry off. This would be another hurdle, but he knew that with Sukanya by his side, he had nothing to worry about. At the same time, she was in the bag with absolute delight. Although he had been neglecting these responsibilities of late, a few years ago, he was having the best time of his life. They regularly engaged in activities in the bedroom, but over the past few years their number had dwindled. He had the desire, of course, but it wasn't the same spark that he had before. He wanted to relive those glory days, but lack of time and changed family scenario limited him in these endeavors. He also had to admit that he didn't look as good as he did 10 years ago. He looked like a very ordinary guy, and his hair fell out regularly like the never-ending rainy season. He believed that he could not be the hero that his wife once considered him. When he was young, everything was at his feet. But now he had to come to terms with his middle-aged physique, as well as his wife's gaze on little boys. Yes, they were there. Although she didn't do it on purpose, every time she went to a party, her gaze reflexively turned to the young company. He couldn't help but notice that they aroused some admiration. He had to come to terms with such a cruel development of his future. Although she pulled herself together and didn't behave badly, he knew that she also had some kind of hormones and, at the same time, her own desires. His heart ached, but he persevered. What was even more painful was that while he grew older and older, she matured into amazing beauty. Every day she became more and more beautiful. Her fans probably just grew up. He could see it in the looks she received every time she left the house. At wedding events, people liked to talk to her. Some brave men have even tried to be something they shouldn't be, but they resigned just like her. She was meek, but avoided anything other than the usual advances from a foreign man. But he knew that she was only human too, and her hormones would rule her mature, middle-aged body. He was afraid that he might lose her. If she was looking for any man, he would be at her feet in no time. With her slender fingers, she could play with any man, and he would just have to watch. He would actually flinch if something like this happened to him. But he also knew that she would never leave him. This last thought made him very happy. He lightly kissed her cheek, admiring and praising her delicate beauty. But today was a special day. It was Sukanya's birthday. He looked at how peaceful she was in her sleep. He thought about giving her the best start to the day. And he continued, removing the blanket from her. An ankle-length nightdress covered her huge figure. His attention was focused on her, and he could not take his eyes off her enchanting beauty. He gently touched her shoulder and kissed her upper chest, causing her to let out a soft sigh. But looking at her face, he realized that she seemed to be sleeping. I wonder what she could have been dreaming about. He walked over to her feet and touched them gently as she shuddered slightly. He carefully unbuttoned her nightgown and carefully lifted her, noticing how her body responded to his touch. He leaned closer, his lips lightly brushing her skin, giving her a caress as she let out another soft moan in her sleep. He enjoyed this moment, as if she was answering him even in his sleep. Sukanya gradually began to realize what was happening, feeling gentle touches and a slight heat from her husband's presence. She smiled to herself, continuing to enjoy this pleasant sensation. In her sleep, she dreamed that a mysterious man was hugging her, giving her attention and care. She felt gentle touches and a sense of security from which she did not want to wake up. The dream was so exciting and pleasant that for a moment she regretted returning to reality. However, she happily accepted the care and tenderness that her husband gave her and enjoyed every moment filled with love and warmth. When she looked at her husband leaning towards her femininity, she felt slightly disappointed. It was instinctive. She compared her husband's physical structure with the figure of her lover in a dream. But after a minute, she pulled herself together. She reproached herself for thinking of Ramesh in such a derogatory light. He was her husband, the love of her life. This one thought made all physical desires disappear in an instant, and she was lost in the pleasure of intimacy with her husband. She loved the way he treated her like she was something special, like she was made for play and joy. And she had to admit that her body responded to this attention, which gave her pleasure. She felt memories and fantasies merge with the present moment, and she was overcome with excitement. Ramesh continued to caress her, and she readily accepted the gentle touches that brought her pleasure. He kissed her lightly, and she trembled from the pleasant sensations. Ramesh lifted her nightgown to touch her skin, and she accepted his every touch, enjoying them. She felt that she could endure even more if it brought her so much joy and excitement. Ramesh was usually content with simple intimacy, but today he wanted to make her day special. He generously gave her his care, and Sukanya squirmed on the bed with joy and happiness. The longer this gentle game continued, the happier she became. After some time, she realized that he was approaching the climax of their intimacy, and soon one of the most vivid sensations that her husband gave her fell upon her. She moaned, not thinking about the fact that the children could wake up. Her voice was filled with warmth and happiness. Gradually, her body relaxed, and Ramesh looked at his beautiful wife, radiating light and tenderness. He could only admire her. She pulled her husband in for a kiss. "Thank you, darling. Please, dear, and happy birthday." She didn't immediately realize that today was her birthday. She smiled as the knowledge slowly dawned on her. Do you remember? How could I forget? She kissed him deeply, and they enjoyed French kissing for a while. How do you like my birthday present? She smiled. I liked it. It's a pity that there isn't a birthday every day. Although she said it in passing, Ramesh caught something in her words. She really liked it, that was obvious. She wanted more, which meant she wasn't getting enough in bed. This thought excited him. Is she really hungry for sex? The way she slept in her dreamy state made him wonder if her hormones were playing with her body. He was clearly alarmed, but tried to hide it with a smile. He didn't want to bring it up so as not to create a problem that probably didn't exist. Sukanya smiled at him, unaware of the storm in his head. I love you, Ramesh, she said, hugging him. These words calmed him down. Yes, their love must overcome all problems. What do you want to do today, dear? Anything special to plan? Although he had asked the question, she felt that there was no sincerity in it. It wasn't because Ramesh was shying away from his plans for the day. She knew how busy he was, how desperately he was trying to pay for his new apartment. He didn't want to miss a single day of work, so he wouldn't feel guilty for not providing for his future. She felt very sorry for him, thinking about how much he had done for the family. And at the same time, she did not feel the desire to celebrate her birthday on a grand scale. No, nothing at all, dear. Go about your work. I also need to go to work. I have a lot to do. Ramesh smiled at her understanding, but he said firmly, but you'll get home early. So do I. Probably by 8, and we'll go to dinner at your favorite restaurant. Is it necessary, Ramesh? She asked. She did not want to go beyond the planned budget. Yes, it is absolutely necessary. Her cell phone rang, and she picked up the phone. Oh, hello, Vanaja. Thank you. Thank you for remembering, she said quietly into the phone. Yes, we'll go together tonight. All right, get me out of the house. I'll be late, but that's okay. Ramesh smiled at her. You're lucky, Suku. You still have friends who remember your birthday. She's the only one, darling. I think I can still get some sleep. I'll be ready an hour later, since she'll come pick me up at 9:30. Does she still work in that textile factory? Yes, Sukanya replied. She has been promoted to manager, so I think she is unlikely to leave there in the near future. Okay, rest, dear. I'll cook breakfast today. Sukanya smiled at him. She liked it when Ramesh cooked. He was a wonderful cook. Although she usually took care of the kitchen when she was busy, he took over and the children benefited from it. She often joked with him that he would be better suited to work as a chef in a roadside cafe than as a businessman. She watched her husband leave the bedroom and covered herself with the blanket again. Soon a magical sensation of sensuality spread through her body as sleep again filled her brain with very explicit images. Oh, these hormones, she sighed. When she woke up at 8:30 and went into the living room, her daughter and son were almost getting ready to leave for college and school. Lavi hugged her and said, Happy birthday, Mom. Thank you, honey, she replied, hugging her back. Her son came next. He was already taller than her, about 80 meters. She hugged him proudly. Happy birthday, Mom. Thank you, dear Curtin. She beamed with joy and added, You are my best baby. Curtin hugged her back and, jokingly, remarked, Don't say that in front of Lavi, Mom. She will be jealous for a whole week. Lavi immediately replied, I'm not a child like you, idiot. It's not me watching cartoons. And I'm not the one who Okay, my dear little ones, that's enough, Sukanya said motherly. I like the way you argue with each other as usual, but take a break at least sometimes. Lavi brought her a package. Look, Mom, what Dad bought you as a gift. Sukanya became alarmed when she saw the packaging. At first glance, it looked like a sari to her, and when she took the fabric out of the wrapper, she was right. She was concerned about the expected price tag. The material looked really expensive. She didn't want Ramesh to spend money on her when it could have been spent on something useful. At that moment, Ramesh came out of the kitchen. Lavi, Curtin, sit down at the table. I know you love these chapatis. The children screamed joyfully and sat down at the table, grabbing chapatis from the plate. Sukanya took her husband aside. Ramesh, what is this? Why did you buy this? This is a gift, dear. Don't you like it? She cursed herself for not even thanking him. No, 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 I really like it. It's gorgeous, one of the best series I've seen, but it looks expensive. How much did it cost? Leave it alone, Sukanya. I don't buy this every day. Just wear it today now, at dinner, or whenever you want. I don't care. Sukanya shook her head. She didn't want to ruin the mood with her words, so she just nodded. She kissed him on the lips and said, "Thank you, darling." She felt a strong surge of love for her husband. He was the ideal man, but she was not. She became a slave to her desires. She didn't understand how to deal with this. The children left early and Ramesh followed them. By 8:30, she was alone. She began to prepare for her day. When the doorbell rang at 9 o'clock, she had already taken a shower. Opening the door, she was not surprised to see her lover. Ranjit smiled as he walked inside and closed the door behind him. He noticed a spark of desire in Sukanya's eyes that was reflected in her gaze. But he was stunned by how this sexy, seemingly innocent housewife looked. She was dressed like a teenager, a stark contrast to the 39-year-old woman she had become today. Her new look was very convincing. She braided her hair into 2 braids, each of which gently touched the upper curves of her breasts. Her delicate features were highlighted by perfect makeup. Her large almond-shaped eyes were lined with black eyeliner, making them mesmerizing. Her long, thin neck was almost naked, which perfectly emphasized the feminine curve of her mother's breasts. She was wearing her daughter's t-shirt, which was a little too small. She hugged her body tightly, emphasizing the lack of a bra. But what attracted Ranjit most was the fact that the lower part of her breasts was slightly visible from under her too tight clothes. It was this fact that made his excitement flare up with renewed vigor. Her figure was graceful and graceful. She wore a skirt that started slightly above the waist and reached mid-thigh, adding a light, sophisticated feel to the look. Despite the simplicity of the outfit, her toned and slender thighs spoke of her confidence and femininity. High heels emphasized her slender legs and completed the harmonious look. As she stood in the hallway of her home, her playful mood was evident. She smiled at Ranjit, and his gaze lingered on her face, where a slight smile and silver earrings made her appearance even more attractive. She bit her lip out of excitement and smiled with a slight enigma that seemed to invite him to get to know her better. Despite all her playful behavior, what mattered most to Ranjit was that her charm lay not only in her looks, but also in her personality. "So, these are the earrings you bought for your daughter." Nodded. She was too lustful to speak or think normally. She knew that her lover was going to explore her insides, not only physically, but also mentally. "You called me that day because those earrings reminded you of me." "Yes," she answered softly. "It was so sensual to accept my guilty pleasures in front of my lover. I remember once telling you that they would look stunning on you. And I was wrong. You are more beautiful than I imagined you to be that day." She winced at his compliments. "So, are you waiting for Dad to have sex with you?" She moaned at his words. "Yes," she shuddered with delight. What? She knew that he would make life difficult for her, and that was what she liked best. "Yes, I'm looking forward to it." Unconvincing proposal, but let me skip that for now. "You are well prepared, aren't you? Is this all for me?" She answered quickly, as if she was almost begging for it. "Yes, I saw your challenge. Now you too must witness my test. Or my answer, for that matter." Ranjit slowly began circling her, clearly amazed by her beauty. He couldn't help but admire her grace and charm, and his look spoke more than words. His presence made her feel excited, goosebumps running through her skin. He always knew how to evoke feelings in her that she couldn't ignore. Ranjit was a special person for her who understood her and knew how to make her happy. She tried to do everything to make him happy so that he would continue to admire her and want to be near her. He stood in front of her and said, "My dear, I want you to know how much I appreciate everything you do for me." Ranjit gently took her hands and looked into her eyes. She felt his strength and confidence, which always supported her. She knew he could be trusted, and that gave her a sense of peace. He was the one she chose anew every day, and she was ready to do anything to keep these feelings. "You really dreamed about this, didn't you?" he said with a smile, and she, feeling slightly embarrassed, just nodded quietly. Her feelings were so strong that she could not hide them. She knew that Ranjit could see right through her, and it made her feel vulnerable but wanted at the same time. "Come to me, my dear," he said softly, and she stepped towards him, feeling a wave of warmth rise within her. She knew that the main thing now was to be together, to feel each other and enjoy the moment that belonged only to the two of them. She smiled and nodded before she carefully took the skirt and slowly lifted it just above her knees. When he looked at her tender image, hidden between the curves, he sighed deeply from the surging feelings. He grabbed her by the waist, pulled her towards him, and kissed her. Sukanya responded with all the warmth of her feelings, hugging his head with her hands and surrendering to the kiss. She remembered the kiss with her husband and noticed the difference. The kiss with Ramesh was tender, reflecting their deep love, and the kiss with Ranjit ignited passion and desire in her. She felt that his influence on her went beyond mere attraction. He took over her thoughts and feelings. He could offer something unexpected, and she would probably agree. That's how much he charmed her. "When did you dream about me?" he asked, tearing away from her lips. She replied, "Only tonight." "And what did you dream about?" "Oh, Ranjit, I dreamed that we were together and that I felt an incredible desire, as if my body and soul were yearning for this moment." They kissed each other again. Sukanya thought, why can't she be with this man? Why wasn't she free every day for Ranjit to satisfy his needs? Why was there not some measure that could satisfy her desires? "I like your outfit, dear. I especially like these earrings." He turned her away from him, continuing to hug and caress her wonderful buttocks. He kissed her neck, and she writhed in pleasure. "Happy birthday, dear." "Thank you very much, Ranjit. I am very grateful that you came all this way for this one purpose." He lightly ran his rough fingers over the underside of her breasts as they peeked out from under her t-shirt. "Don't be so impudent, honey. Who said I came here for you? I came to the city on an errand." As he spoke, he continued to kiss her neck tenderly. She replied, "Oh, sorry. I just thought." He smiled and said, "I'm kidding, baby. I came for you. I don't have anything to do, just you." She smiled happily at him after hearing this. "You're really kidding me. What I really want is to be close to you." He carefully removed her t-shirt, exposing her shoulders. She saw in the mirror how he hugged her and felt how everything inside was filled with warmth and tenderness. She moaned, "This is probably the best birthday in the world." "The day is not over yet, my dear," he smiled. "We still have a lot of time ahead." She was lost in this moment, feeling his closeness and his gentle touches. She placed her hands on his, as if wanting him not to stop. "You have the best heart I've ever met, honey," he said. "Oh, I like your hands when you hold me like this," she whispered. "So, baby," he continued, "what are your plans for the day?" She smiled and replied, "I hope that we will spend this day together." He smiled back and gently squeezed her shoulders. "Of course, my dear. This day is all yours. Ramesh wants to invite me and the whole family to dinner at my favorite restaurant." "Oh," she sighed when he suddenly touched her hand. "And then maybe we'll watch a movie and go home." Ranjit liked her voice as she spoke with a warm, slightly hoarse intonation. What about vacation? Have you planned anything interesting for our time?" She turned to him, and they both smiled. "You know how much I love spending time with you, but it's not always easy to organize." "Don't worry about it, my dear," he replied. "All you need to think about is enjoying the moment. Come on, let's go inside. Let's get comfortable." She took him into the living room, and he asked, "Would you like to dance for me? It would be nice to have some fun." She laughed. "I'm not a very good dancer." "Of course you can," Ranjit encouraged her. He noticed an audio player nearby and, after looking through several CDs, chose something suitable. I think it's a great tune. Come on, show me how you can move, he smiled. The atmosphere in the room became light and joyful as she began to move to the beat of the music. The sight of her sincere smile and relaxed dance lifted his spirits. She remembered dancing when she was a teenager and began to have more confidence in her movements. Ranjit clapped his hands and supported her. She danced with pleasure, enjoying the moment. Her dance was simple but energetic and showed her genuine joy. Ranjit was delighted looking at her and could not believe that this calm and modest housewife could have as much fun as she did in her youth. When the song ended, he found another composition, more rhythmic, and they continued to have fun together, enjoying the evening time. The words had an effect on her as she slowly removed her side-clasp skirt. She took it off completely as she was only wearing a t-shirt, high heels, and huge steel earrings. She made suggestive hip movements to the beat of the song. He was worried about this bitch's behavior. But the excited housewife's anxiety was at its peak. Sukanya was very excited, and when she saw the interested look of her lover Ranjit and his attraction in every movement, her heart began to beat even faster. She was overwhelmed with emotions, causing trepidation and slight excitement. Ranjit went into the other room briefly and returned smiling approvingly. She looked at him with eyes full of desire, sitting on the floor, feeling an incredible connection between them. Sukanya stood up, making light, graceful movements of her hips. Ranjit couldn't help but smile as he looked at her casual and expressive actions. She took the hem of her t-shirt and lifted it slightly, exposing some of her breasts. Then, lifting her t-shirt under her neck, she showed him her beauty. Ranjit felt his heart beat faster. Her gaze was playful, her lips slightly curved in a smile, and her hands gently touched her body. At that moment, Ranjit thought how surprising it was that so much passion and desire was hidden behind the appearance of a simple and innocent housewife. She took off her t-shirt and stood in front of him, open and bold. Sukanya, a housewife who was looked upon by her neighbors as the epitome of calm and simplicity, turned out to be so passionate and free in front of her lover. When the music stopped, Ranjit carefully placed her on the bed. He held her close to him, and Sukanya felt this pleasant warmth growing inside her. He spoke tender words to her, and she answered him, smiling. It was the moment of intimacy and mutual understanding that they had been waiting for so long. Their love was sincere and strong, and at that moment they felt completely happy and free with each other. He lay down on his back and pulled her in for a kiss. She kissed back and pressed herself against him, feeling the warmth of his embrace. He gently ran his hands over her thighs, gently massaging her back and shoulders before moving her head away, looking into her eyes and saying with a small smile, "It's time for me to show you how much I want you." Sukanya happily responded to his words, feeling his care and tenderness. She leaned towards him, running her lips over his chest and leaving tender kisses. He responded to her caresses, moaned with pleasure, and felt that an even greater connection was arising between them. They exchanged glances, and in these glances one could read passion and mutual desire. Their touches were smooth and reverent, and each of them enjoyed closeness and understanding, without demanding anything extra. Ranjit looked at Sukanya with tenderness and noticed how her eyes shone with love and devotion. He hugged her tightly and kissed her, enjoying every moment of their intimacy. They were one, and every touch strengthened this connection. He felt her respond to his movements and was delighted by her devotion. Their breathing merged into a single rhythm, and every moment seemed infinitely important and valuable. As time passed, they both realized how close they had become to each other. Sukanya felt that this moment was the most wonderful birthday gift and knew that Ranjit was the person she was willing to entrust everything to. They smiled at each other, and there was no doubt in their views, only tenderness, passion, and deep mutual respect. After the storm, they lay in this position for several minutes. Sukanya lost consciousness for a second, but soon came to her senses. When the heat subsided, they both remained lying on the bed. She was on his side, and they kissed silently for a long time. Then he looked at her and said, "Every time I meet you, you never disappoint me. You're absolutely amazing in bed, darling." She looked at him slyly and answered, Thank you, Daddy. It was the first time she called him Daddy, and she did it without any emotion, without excitement. It was really unusual. Oh, so I'm your daddy. Yes, it's possible. You've said it yourself many times. He liked her innocent smile framed by large silver earrings and kissed her on the lips. She got up from the bed, went to another room, and returned already dressed in a sari, like an ordinary housewife. Her two braids disappeared. Her hair was now down. He sighed. Well, here we go again, housewife mode. She replied, well, you didn't want to interfere with my work. Why do you want to spend more time with me, Daddy? Her voice was hoarse and inviting. She was clearly tempting him. She wanted him to say yes, so that she could fulfill his desire and at the same time her own. He shook his head. No, honey, I don't want to disrupt your routine. Sukanya was clearly upset and disappointed by his refusal. She would have torn off her clothes in that instant to make love to him again. But she couldn't beg. She just couldn't. By the way, dear, I brought you something. She became wary. Don't tell me it's a gift. And she turned out to be right. She didn't notice what he was holding in his hands when he came into the house. She was too focused on their intimacy. Even when he took a short break during her dance, she again did not pay attention to it, continuing to try to impress him. Now she noticed a hard paper bag that was shaped like a medium-sized bag. Seeing the logo of a jewelry company on it, her heart sank. From the package, she took out a large jewelry case. Why did you bring this, Ranjit? This is a small gift, dear. I can't accept him, Ranjit. Of course you will. First look at what's inside. She unfastened the small metal clasp and opened the case. She was amazed by what she saw, a necklace studded with diamonds. It was clearly a priceless piece of jewelry, she knew that. Along with it were earrings, a gold brooch, a bracelet, and a set of wrist bracelets. She estimated that the value of the contents of the case was equal to the price of 2 apartments. I can't accept this, Ranjit. Sorry, but I can't. I don't want this to happen between us. What's wrong, baby? It's just a gift. If it was just a small ring, I would be fine with it. But why did you buy all this? It's very expensive. I know this. Don't deny it. Listen, Sukanya, the price doesn't matter. What matters is the feeling with which it was purchased. I wish you had it. She shook her head. Ranjit made her sit on the bed. He pulled her hard into his arms, and she winced in pain. Are you my bitch? Yes, I am like that, but are you a damn easy woman who would like to spend her life giving me pleasure? Yes. You want me to keep having sex with you, you dirty bitch? God, yes. Then you will accept them. You think accepting these gifts will ruin our friendship. You're probably right. I'm giving this to you like a king rewards his girls of easy virtue. You're my bitch, right? Yes, I am. She looked into her eyes and said those words with pure conviction. Then you will take them. She looked at him with a look of pure love. She looked at him with the feeling that a man hopes a woman will look at him and desire him. But Sukanya was a very gentle creature. She valued relationships over wealth. She loved him more as company than as a good fuck. She nodded and agreed. I think I'll prepare myself for office work. Of course, he released her, and she returned to the next bedroom. Almost 20 minutes had passed when she returned. But Ranjit was not prepared for what he was about to see. She wore her hair in one long traditional braid that hung over her right shoulder between her breasts. She did not have a single seam of clothing, but she wore the jewelry that he gave her. As she pulled her braid back, he noticed a diamond necklace covering her entire neck. Bracelets, earrings, everything shone in all its glory. Her head was bowed in submission and shame. Her legs hugged her hips softly, and she felt an excitement that could not go unnoticed. Sukanya was happy when she noticed that her lover was showing interest again. She said quietly, Your courtesan, my dear king, is at your service. Ranjit stood up from the bed and gently took her in his arms. He looked into her eyes, which shone with innocence and trust. He touched her lips with a light kiss. This moment was filled with something deep and touching, and they both enjoyed it, as if forgetting about everything else. The kisses became longer and more sensual. He held her close, lifting one of her hips, and allowed himself to feel close to her. Their touches and movements were filled with tenderness and passion, allowing them to feel a real connection with each other. Sukanya smiled because this was exactly the image she had dreamed about last night, her mysterious lover and their moments of tenderness. She wanted these moments to last as long as possible. "No, honey, I don't want to rush," he whispered, hugging her to him. "Let this day be filled with happiness and tenderness. This is my gift to you." Sukanya kissed him, feeling her heart fill with love. She pressed herself against him, feeling his warmth and care as he gently stroked her thighs, gently holding her in his arms. 15 minutes later, they were both dressed. Ranjit drove her to the office in a rented car at 11. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.